We're going to study some important Excel functions. We will look at data validations and how to use them. Filter, sort, lookup functions, when to use them, pivot tables, and charts. Let's get right into it. Let's begin with now what you have as data. This is a blank sheet. This is just a blank sheet altogether. Let's study the ribbon to begin with. The ribbon has some default views. There is a home, there's an insert to allow us to add in additional pieces like pictures, tables, shapes, icons, smart art. So a lot of other pieces that you have even in regular Office applications, they are available to us here. We have a page layout, again, the same as most other Office applications. You will be able to set up theming, colors, fonts, margins. These are relatively ill-used. They are not very commonly used. What I love to use here is grid lines. Here or in view, you will find grid lines. So grid lines allow you to see every individual cell or turn it off as I prefer it, but to each their own. There are formulae that can be defined. So you have a ton of formulae that are possible in Excel. These are functions actually, though it's called formulas. What are actually used are functions with which you can combine and create formulae. Let's get to data. While there are different aspects of data, most of this we will not be looking at today. However, let's jump straight into it and start with entering data. Every cell here within a worksheet has two coordinates. There is the column and the row. So the columns are all letters and the rows are all numbers. So if you look at this particular cell, it is thought of as F9. Similarly, this one is I16. That is the reference for every single cell. I'm going to enter some data. Let's take a name. Let's have a few. So I'm entering. Let's put a salary. I'm entering a salary. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That should do. Let's make this a little extra. And there we go. Right. So I have 3 salaries. And let's add a manager. Now, all 3 have the same manager. I have an option of saying this is the manager and this manager. If you see here, my cursor, as it approaches this corner, let me expand this for you. As I'm expanding, you can see that little, this little bit. When I hover over it, this handle becomes a plus sign. I have an option of double clicking on it. It extends all the way down to the last entry, the left, or I can, while there, hold down and pull. Like in everything else in Microsoft, they offer 10 ways of doing exactly the same thing. So besides these 2 ways, a very common way of doing it is to select the entire lot, type whatever you want to type, and holding down the control key, hit enter. And this gives you exactly the same set, fully pre-filled. So this filling of information helps significantly in different scenarios. Oh, I need to correct this. I can click here and do a backspace. I can double click here and do a backspace, or I can use the F2 key and do a backspace and correct the spelling. Now, data really requires us to do a lot of aggregations, which means that we need to do some bits of totaling. Now, there are different kinds of totals. Again, I'll show you a few ways of achieving this. You see this? If I select all three, then down at the bottom, you can see the sum. So here it shows 9,30,000 as a sum. Another way of doing this is I click just below that and I do Alt is equal to. This gives me the sum of all of the values above it. Another way is I go here on the home ribbon where we have undo, clipboard, font, alignment, number, styles, cells, and editing. Under editing, I have an option called auto sum. I click on that and I get exactly the same thing. But there's an advantage. With Alt is equal to, I always get sum. But with auto sum, I have the option of choosing average, count numbers, max, min. I'll go with average, enter, and straight away it tells me that 3,10,000 is the average for these three values. All right, this is where I'm dealing with data, which is being entered from scratch. I'm creating my own piece, and I have now a salary which has been averaged. I have seen how I can enter the same data across rows. Now let's look at what has happened when this is a sheet 1. What happens if I click on new sheet here, or I say, what shall I do? Okay, let me look at inserting. I'll insert a sheet from here. So when I insert the sheet or I click on the plus below, it gives me a new sheet with a new number. So it looks like sheet 2 and sheet 3 were already created earlier and deleted, which is why it has created sheet 4. If I were to now delete this and go and click on new sheet again, it gives me sheet 5 because sheet 1, 2, 3, 4 have already existed. All right, let's look at data. Now, the purpose of Excel is to work with all kinds of data. Let's look at data. This is a kind of data where we have a region code. We have a sales office, a salesperson. We have something called closed customers, new customers, lost customers. It doesn't really matter what this data is talking about at this moment, whether you understand these or not. The important thing to note is I have a table available to me here. This table shows me a lot of values for region code, for sales office, for salesperson, and so on and so forth. I have 3 numbers and 3 IDs of sorts. Let's imagine that I want to understand how many were retained customers. This for me could be a simple calculation. I say is equal to. All calculations in Excel start with is equal to. For you much older users of Excel, we have sometimes a habit of starting with a plus. If I say plus and I click on this, it will take exactly the same value there, 150, but it will show me the is equal to automatically added. What this means is that the value in G2 is the same as a value in D2. If this value were to change to 149, then the value in G2 would automatically change. So now I'm going to take another calculation. I'm just going to say is equal to retained customers for me is 149 minus 14. So my retained customers are 135. And this is D2 minus E2. Remember how we looked at this data and we pulled this text down all the way? We came here and we pulled it down, or we double clicked it, depending on how you want to do it. This is a formula. If I go back here and double click on this, it will update the entire formula for all the 79,999 rows that I have here, all of them. This is the simplicity of copying a formula down. Now, I do have a bit of an issue. You see here, I see D2 minus E2. So every single time, if I come here and I want to understand, okay, D8 minus E8, 101, how did this happen? D is close customers, E is new customers. So close customers minus new customers is the value that I'm seeing under retained customers. Okay, I'm going to delete this. I don't really need this at the moment. So I have right clicked on delete, entire column, and go. This is gone. Now I'm going to do something a little different. Excel provides us an option of always working with data in cells, individual cells like this, or considering the whole thing formatted as table. So in under styles, format as table, we can choose literally any one of these. It's just the look and feel, whichever we like. At this moment, this is what catches my fancy. So I will click on this. It says, where is the data for your table? I don't need to do anything. It has automatically identified it. And it has said, my table has headers, check, because it understood that I have here only numbers and text here, but pure text on top. So it has identified it as headers for my table. I click on this and it is done. I can switch, I can change to something else, whatever takes my fancy at any point in time. Okay, so I will go with something. It doesn't matter what. Let me take a right. So now I have got this list. This doesn't look so good. Let me switch back. Okay. So you see here, I have this formatted as a table. What actually does this mean? What this means here is, I'm sorry, this is a webinar. I'm moving really fast, so I'm not able to share the file with you so that you could work alongside. So what I have here as a lost customers, let me go back and see my creation of a retained customer set. So retain customers. Okay. Before I do this, let me escape, come back here. I'm clicking inside somewhere. Do you see there's a new ribbon that has appeared on top called table design? It's a dynamic one. If I click outside the table, it disappears. If I click inside the table, it reappears. So if I click on this table design, it gives me a certain number of options. First of all, this table is called table 3. Let me change the name. Let me call this customers. Okay. So this table is called customers. And I have an option of adding a total row. Oh, that's nice. Let me click on total row. When I click on a total row, what it does is provide me with the complete total for the last column. So the last set of numbers, I can see lost customers. I can set for others as well by using the same row. I click on this, you'll find a lot of these drop downs. Across Excel, you will find drop downs. So this drop down gives me an option of saying which one I would like to calculate. I say sum. Let me do it for these as well. And here, I will say that I want, do I have more functions? What options do I have? Okay. So no, I'm not looking at maybe a count. Let me just do a count. So this shows me that I have 79,999 rows and the total count is A, B, and C. You can see the numbers right there. But I want to call your attention to this function. This does not tell me sum. You remember when we calculated the sum earlier, or average in this case, it showed us average blah, blah, blah. Right now, we have subtotal 109 lost customers. If I were to change this to average, this shows me subtotal 101 lost customers. If I switch to count, it tells me 103. So actually, what this is doing is it allows me to take the subtotal. Why subtotal? We'll come to that in just a minute. And based on whatever I have selected, it uses some internal code of its own to say that, okay, count is 103, average is 101, and sum is 109. Why does it use a subtotal? Let me show you. Imagine that I would like to see for not all of these region codes, I have 6 region codes. Let's imagine that I need only for number 4, region code 4. Or let's bung in 2 as well, 2 and 4. And I say, okay, so I'm filtering now. You see, I came here and unchecking select all. I said I want 2 and 4. I click OK. This gives me 30,483 rows. You can see that here as well. Automatically, it will show you how many rows are showing after the filter is applied. So I have 30,483 rows and the totals have updated. Now they are only summing up the values that are visible after the filter is applied. This is the beauty of using the subtotal function. So is equal to subtotal, comma, whatever number you need, 101, 102, all the way down. And this, you select the range. The range here, and this is the beauty of format as table. It is now lost customers. You see, it uses the header. I do not have to see it as we did here. C2 to C4. So this has to be read as the C2 colon C4 has to be read as C2 to C4. But instead of doing that, I'm saying all of lost customers. Anything in this column has to be considered. So this is what the subtotal function is for. In this manner, there are several different functions that you will find. So let me show you again. If I were to clear this and subtotal 109, let's imagine for close customers, I want to capture the average. New customers, again, let's look at the average. Ditto. So without worrying myself too much about writing out functions, using just this total approach, how did I get that? Table design, total row. I can remove it, add it back. Here, I'm switching back to sum. So each of these what I'm selecting is the text, the label, and average, count numbers, max. Every one of these is a function with a number attached, a code. 101 is for average and 109 is for sum. So when I do the sum, it automatically gives me 109. It is its internal way of using the function. 103 is for count, so that's what I'm getting here. Now, I see a question about Google Sheets. Well, I wouldn't suggest that you try and use these for Google Sheets. Google Sheets functions in a very different manner. There are some things that overlap, but not everything. So coming back to our set here of subtotals, which gives me so many different options of filtering. You see, I have got here one filter for region code, which I showed you. What if I wanted to look at a sales office? I'm looking at one single sales office, B05. I click on OK, and it tells me there are 915 rows, and the total number is this, that, and the other. All right. I go back here and I say clear filter. I could take salesperson and say same thing. I choose something, one or more, and it gives me a new set of values without me needing to worry. No calculations changes on my side at all. Okay, so this is where I'm working with data. At this point, I want to calculate that retained customers. You remember we were trying that earlier, retained customers. So I will click on this. And all of a sudden, this table, if I go to table design and look at resize table, it shows me A to G. G has suddenly been added visually and inside the table definition just because I entered a value next to this. Will it happen if I do something? I'm doing a control Z. Will it happen if I enter something here and not in the header? I'm going to enter 9. Straight away, I get a new column added, except that this does not have a title. I can add it in. So retain customers. Now, let me delete this. This is junk for me. Remember what we did earlier? We did D2 minus E2. I'm going to do exactly the same thing, is equal to D2 minus E2. The difference this time is because I have used the option to format as table, Excel builds in certain intelligence. I don't have to worry to understand what is D and what is E. It automatically gives me those titles. Closed customers minus new customers is 135. So this calculation is available to me in better readability than before. Because really, D2 minus E2, what is that going to, how is that going to help anyone? So when we look at data here, we are seeing data in one big difference inside the table. You see, earlier I had to enter it and then drag it down. But that's not the case here at all. I don't have to do anything. I just say D2 minus E2 and enter. The minute I enter, it populates the entire column for that table with this formula. So I don't need to worry at all. My work is reduced and it is improved. So this is something which I highly recommend to anyone. Please go ahead and use the option for formatting as table and then create whatever you wish. Now, I have closed customers, new customers, lost customers, retained customers. At this point, I have one more need in this data. You see, I have a reference sheet which tells me that region code 1 is north, region code 2 is south. So this list is available to me. This has been formatted as, you can see table design. Therefore, you know this is formatted as table. This is formatted with the name region. Now, what have we seen so far? We've seen that we can enter data inside either individually or across cells. We have seen how we can apply a function automatically using AutoSum. So we have just used AutoSum here and said, I want the sum, or I want the average, etc., etc. Whatever the options that you can see there, all of those are available to us. We also saw how when we are working with data, we can take that entire data and format it as a table, create a new calculation from the existing bits. And now what we're going to learn is how to get relevant information inside from some other table. So I have here region code 3. 3, let me go to reference, and 3 is west. So I'm going to enter west. Let me name this just region. So I have west. The next one is 6. 6 is exports. And so I have exports. Now, in an ideal world, if I have to start entering something like this, it means the organization should give me so much time that I don't need to do anything else, because this is nearly 80,000 rows. Remember that. So if I have to do this for 80,000 rows, I'll still be doing this next week. Oh, no, forget it. I'll be doing this next month. So the way to do this is quickly pick up data automatically. If you see here, this reference, I'm going to pick up automatically. I'm going to show you there are many different types of lookups. The most popular that people tend to use used to be VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. I strongly dissuade, over the years, I have always said that VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP have severe restrictions. They have constraints. They have a lot of limitations. But one way of ensuring that those limitations do not hurt your data is to use a combination of index match. So I'm going to say index. It's very helpful. It gives you a pop-up. So I say tab. So I started typing index. It showed me that. I just tabbed it. It opened brackets. And then I said, what do I want to index? I want to index the name. So I select this. And then I say comma. And at this point, I want to match. On what basis will I get this? I need to match something. I need to match the region code, comma, against this list. 1, 2, 6. I need it to be absolutely exact. So, comma, 0. You can see here, less than, exact match, greater than. Exact match is what I want. I close brackets once, I will close brackets twice. What I have is here a formula with two functions in it. So I'm using index, and inside the index, I'm using match. If I want to understand this, you see, I click on this, I have array, and this whole thing is being used to collect the row number. So I have the array and the row number. Don't have to go into the details of this. Just understand that this is one way of doing the most accurate way in the old cell without any limitations of getting a lookup. If I do this, of course, it will populate across top to bottom all 80,000, nearly 80,000 rows. The data is automatically filled. And because this is a formula, I have the advantage of going in here. If the region code changes to something else, automatically this becomes south. If I go from here to 6, it'll become exports. And there you go. Okay, so using lookups, when will you use index and match? Only when you have to share your file with somebody working on an older version of Excel. If you're working with a newer version of Excel, you will use something different. I will show you this once more because this is one of the most used functions, combination of functions in Excel. Okay, so I want you to write down very quickly this sentence. I will write it down here for you. You can copy it out. Index the list of what you want by matching the value that you have against its list. Okay, index the list of what you want. What does that mean? Is equal to index the list of what I want. This is the list that I want, comma, by matching. So match, what do I match? The value that I have here. I have region code against its list. This is its list, comma, exact match, close brackets once, close brackets twice, enter. All right, so I repeat, here we have index the list of what you want by matching the value that you have against its list. And now that you've learned index match, I will make you wish that you only have to work with other people who are using the latest version of Excel, because the newer versions of Excel now use XLOOKUP. So if you have 2019 or Microsoft 365, then Excel gives you an even simpler way called XLOOKUP. XLOOKUP says, what is your lookup value? My lookup value is region code. Okay, where do you want to look it up? Okay, this is the list. All right. And what do you want to get back? I want it to return the region. Close brackets, enter. And I get exactly the same set all over again. But which do you find easier? Index and match or XLOOKUP? It doesn't matter. You need to learn both, because index match, if you are going to share this file with someone with an older version of Excel than Excel 2019 or Office 365. So XLOOKUP is beautiful. It gives you straight away. Let me show you this once more. Like I said, this is going to be one of the most used function for you. XLOOKUP. What are you looking up? Region code. Where is its list? This is its list. And after looking this up, what do you want next? Region. Close brackets. So this is how you look up values. Now, I have a question here as to what happens if there are two rows with the same number. So I cannot use a 1, 2, 3, 4 if I were to have okay, I will call this sales office. Okay, just to keep it different, I will say sales office, and I will give these this a bunch of other values. It doesn't matter what. Shall I take the list of sales offices? Okay. You see, I'm holding down Control, Shift, and down arrow. I'm right at the top. First value, Control, Shift, down arrow. Copy. I will open a new sheet. And in this, I will say paste as values, which will remove the formatting. I don't want that green color. I just want the list. I will go to data and I will say, let me remove duplicates. It gives me how many, which columns to choose, only one. Okay. It says 91 unique values remain. That is it. I have 91 unique values. So if I wish, I can take these values. Let me make it a little easier for myself and sort these A to Z. Okay, so this is my list. Imagine I take this, copy it, go into the reference and paste it here. I have only 6 values, mind you, but I have 91 values there. I'm pasting it, doing a Control V. And the table has automatically extended all the way down. So I don't have to go changing multiple formulae all over the place. I need numbers for all of this. So I need something beyond 5 and 6. So I will take 5, 6, select both, use this, double click. Excel has understood that 5 and 6 have a difference of 1. So it is now incrementing everything by 1 all the way down. So it shows me autofilled till 91. Now, what happens if in my data, I click here, let me change my formula is equal to X lookup region code, comma, reference, comma, and region. So obviously it's a mistake. This is not right. I can't be using this link against that. But what happens if I do this? If I hit enter, now the system is taking a little extra time than earlier because it is finding that something is wrong. And it has shown me that there's an error. There's a value error. So if I look at the formula, I can see, oh, my mistake. This should be region. And it's corrected. Okay. So this is one way of ensuring that your data is right. So what have we done now? We have used first a quick calculation and we have done an X lookup. So we've done a lookup, but life doesn't stop there. What we need to do often, what we are required to do is to create a little summary. I want to know what is the total. So let me go down. If you see here, I have these values, these totals. Imagine I want to understand these totals, the sum for each region code. I can do this. 1. Okay. Next, I go and select 2. Yes. Okay. I go and select 3. Not the brightest way of comparing, because this means that my head has to have a memory of its own, much larger, to retain all of these numbers. Instead, what I will do, and like I said earlier, Microsoft doesn't want to give us one way of doing things, they give us multiple. One simple way is clicking anywhere inside, I can go to Insert and click on Pivot Table. Okay. Or I can go to Table Design and say Summarize with Pivot Table. For now, I'm going to click on Insert and click on Pivot Table. It gives me an option, Customers, Table Range. Yes, that's right. New worksheet. Yes, I don't want to do it in an existing worksheet. I don't change anything here. I just click on OK. It gives me this mysterious box here and a set of pivot table fields. And to make things more interesting, it has also now shown me a pivot table analyze ribbon and a design ribbon. Now, let me first show you what can go wrong, because this happens easily to new users. You click on this by mistake and your pivot table fields are gone. Now, what do you do? Don't worry about it the least bit. You see this field list here? Now, this pivot table analyze will disappear if you click somewhere outside. If you click inside the space, it will show you again pivot table analyze, field list. Click on it, it'll come back. Now, I want by region code here, and I need the retain customers. So I drag and drop that here. Okay. So this shows me 1, this is the total, 2, this is the total, 3, this is the total, so on and so forth. Of course, it makes more sense for me to look at this as a region and not region code. So it shows me East, this is what it is, exports, NCR, etc., etc. Now, I have an option. I can click on this value field settings, number format, number. I don't want decimal places, but I definitely want the 1000 separator. Okay, okay, and here we go. So I have here now the sum of retained customers, which shows me the total for each one and the grand total. Okay. This is what is called a pivot table. Let me go here and remove this grid lines. Now, I can filter this pivot table and say, hey, I'm not looking at exports, remove this NCR. Let's look at the rest. So this is my data, reduced data, and it shows me east, north, south, west, whatever I'm looking at. I can switch this to say sort Z to A. So it will show me west, south, north, east. Okay. So if I have these pieces, so I have noted the question on the lookup. I'll come right back to that. If I'm looking at this information, imagine that I don't want to see all the sales offices. I want to see only for some sales offices, or I want to exclude certain sales offices from this data. So the question to ask is, how do I do that? Do I add sales office also here? Which I can. You see, I can drag it here and it will show me west, all of these sales office numbers below that. Close that, south, close that, or just right click on this and say expand, collapse entire field. So I can do this and then say, I want to remove B02, B07, B10. The numbers will now reduce. because that will get filtered out. This is one way of doing it. But there's a nicer way of doing this generally when you're not looking at the individual numbers, you're only looking at the totals. Let me remove sales office. I have two ways again of removing it. Either I uncheck or I drag this out. You remember that pivot table analyze that we saw earlier? We go back there and we click on insert slicer. Sales office, I can add more if I please. Right now, I only want sales office. So I say, okay. Now in sales office, this is a very long list, very long. Let me just expand this a little bit. You see this number of columns on top? This is a new ribbon called slicer. This is what happens where certain new objects are added. A slicer, a ribbon gets added for it. In this case, a slicer ribbon for slicer object. I'm going to increase this number of columns. Okay, that should do it. You remember we removed 0, 2, 0, 7, 10. They show here that they have been removed. If I, without doing anything, if I just click on B30, then it will show me only B30 values. I can now switch like this, or I can hold down the control key and select sum. Now the sum of whatever is selected is what will show here. Or clear filter, multi-select. Now I do the reverse. I don't want B24, B52, B47, and so on and so forth across. I am removing certain sales offices. Okay. So at a glance, I can look at the data by region with certain sales offices removed. Now, I want to see this as a chart. It's very common that people want to see data in a chart. I have again different options. I can go to insert and click on pivot chart, or in pivot table analyze. Here itself, I can say pivot chart. I will click on pivot chart and it gives me some options. I have columns, lines, pies, bars. I will go with a bar. I will select bar. So I've got bar. Let me move it here. Let me remove the space. So there, I have bars. Now, ideally, when I'm looking at this data, I want my eyes to focus on whichever is the biggest number. I have different ways of achieving this. You see, when I look at my data here, this data shows me a sort option and tells me sort, I will go for largest to smallest. When I sort it largest to smallest, it gives me this largest to smallest. But of course, because it's a bar, it looks like smallest to largest. Let me right click on this, change the chart type and say column. And this is what my data will look like. I can play around with this a lot. I can go inside pivot chart analyze. I have options here. I have design. In design, so I have format also, which allows me to format individual elements. I will take design. I will say, you know what? I want to make some quick changes to this chart. Let me put a data label outside end. Since I'm putting a data label, I do not need, what shall I remove? I don't need the vertical axis. I also don't need grid lines. So let me look at no line. Now tell me, the total doesn't make much sense. So I will also go in here and I say chart title, none. And there you go. There's a total legend. So let's remove that legend as well. None. There. I have a nice clean chart which tells me what the values are for north, south, west, east, and I can immediately see what the visual differences between this slot. In the meantime, I'm also removing a few more and you can see the impact. Okay. Whatever is happening here is impacting both this and that because they are interlinked. So I'm coming back to that question of best practice for lookups. Lookups typically avoid using VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP altogether. The reason is VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP need the data to be organized in a particular manner. And if those rules are not respected, the data that comes can be wrong. But when it comes to XLOOKUP and index match, there are no limitations. So you can use index match or XLOOKUP. Just keep in mind that if you use XLOOKUP, that field will have a problem when you share it with someone using maybe Excel 2016 or 2013. So XLOOKUP will work well with the newer versions and index match will work with all versions. So that is a simple answer on how to use, when to use which lookup. Now, let's say that I have here, and I see someone has asked that question. You remember I have this data, and in this data, I have at the bottom, let me just go to control N, I have total. I don't want the total coming in my pivot table. Very straightforward. I remove the total row. Now, let's say that since yesterday, I have some new data that has been added. I have new data. So my table has grown. What happens to my calculations? Okay, let me delete this since it's not relevant for me. This is what I will call analysis. All of my files, so I've been using now Excel since the day they launched. And in all these years, what I have always maintained is a habit of creating a minimum of 3 sheets. One sheet where I have my data, one sheet where I have all my reference tables, and one which is my analysis. Anyone opening any of my files will know where to go for what immediately. So inside this analysis, if you see the values now, they show 5417503. Keep in mind this number, but the data itself has changed. My data has grown. I come here, I right click, and I click on refresh. So you see 5417503. I'm going to copy this and paste it as a value, just so we have a reference point. And I will right click and click on refresh. Now you see it's 5418697 because there are additional rows. So all of that data is now available here. So my data can keep changing. It can get added to, it can get subtracted from. Ultimately, all you need to do is come here and click on refresh. Even if you have 40 different pivot charts, refreshing one is enough because they are all interconnected. So it will refresh everything else. So all you have to do here is work on. Okay, I have a question. Yes. So slicing and chart. when exactly do you need slices? When do you need chart? I'll give you a simple example. It's all about control. I want to keep control over my file. So whenever someone wants to do something with this, they have to come and ask me. In which case, gone, gone. This is the data. I will copy this, paste it in an email and send it out. Then they say, what all have you excluded? I will say, hold on, just a minute. And I will, in this case, of course, click pivot table analyze, insert slicer, sales office. Okay, it'll come back to me in this tiny little form. Not its fault. That's how it was designed. I will switch this to 7 columns. And I can see which are the ones. Okay. Now they tell me, somebody tells me, can you remove B53, 54, 55? So I'm keeping control for myself. Oops. Multi-select. Yes. 53, 54, 55. And now there's a new set. And I send this again. However, when you want to give control to someone else, you share the file with somebody else so that they can work with it. This is how we are going to do it. We're going to build in a slicer, as many slicers as are useful for the end user. And we will give them an option to view a chart. Because if I give them a chart, it is a quick feed. They don't have to worry too much. They don't have to read and look at a table of data. They only need to understand what exactly is required. I'm not at this moment going to do too much. I remove this, I add the data labels outside end. So everything that I'm doing here, I'm doing it really fast. But really, if you play around with this, you will understand that it's really not a big deal. Anyone can do what I'm doing right now with great ease. And that's all it took. A few clicks and you have a different looking chart and my chart is ready. Now, I have here an option of, you remember that when we were looking at this and I have in pivot table analyze, I look at the field list and I say, let me put salespersons underneath region. So I have this. You see what is happening? North, south, west. My data has gone for a toss. Why? Let me come back here, fold this. And this is how, if I had fewer bits of data, I would be able to compare north, south, west, and east with its breakup. Imagine having year and quarters. I could show 3 years totaled up and 1 year with only its quarters. Obviously, this is an ugly chart because I have too many values here, but this helps take care of a lot of this. Well, we are on the hour, and I'm so sorry that I've been going so fast. I was trying to cover as many points as possible. I'm not sure as to whether you all have access or not, or how you will review this, but I'm hoping that you've learned something out of this that you can apply at work with your own files. Thank you all, and happy excelling.